The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a cathedral. Light fell from windows made of crystal that had been grown over 10,000 years. Representatives from 100 species sat in their assigned places, their bodies shaped by evolution on worlds scattered across the galaxy. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no solid form at all. They were ancient beyond human understanding, and they knew it. Ambassador Lisa Monroe walked toward the central platform. She was 62 years old, with gray hair pulled back tight and a face that showed every difficult year she had spent in this place. Behind her, Admiral Daniel Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was pressed perfect. His medals caught the light. His eyes showed nothing. Lisa stopped at the speaking circle and waited for permission to address the council. High Arbiter raised one of his 4 arms. His skin the color of old bronze, his eyes like pools of black water. He had led the council for 300 years. To him, Lisa Monroe was a child speaking to gods. "The human delegation may present their request," he said. His voice echoed through translation devices that turned his words into sounds Lisa could understand. Lisa took a breath. She had given this speech 100 times in her mind. She had practiced it until the words felt like stones in her mouth. None of that practice made this moment easier. "High Arbiter, honored council members," she began. "Humanity has been part of this council for 150 years. In that time, we have shared our medical technology freely. We have sent our soldiers to fight in conflicts that did not concern us. We have given our knowledge, our labor, and our lives in service to this alliance." She paused. The chamber was silent. "We ask today for the removal of the territorial restrictions placed on human colonies. We ask for the right to expand to unclaimed worlds. We ask for nothing more than the same freedoms enjoyed by every other member species." The silence stretched. Lisa could feel the weight of alien eyes upon her. Counselor O'Kay rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with skin like gray leather and teeth that were slightly too sharp. They had never hidden their hatred of humanity. They called humans vermin when they thought no one was listening. Sometimes they said it when everyone was listening. "The human speaks of contribution," O'Kay said. His voice was cold and smooth. "Let us speak of what the humans truly are. A species that lives for barely a century. A species ruled by emotion and impulse. A species that destroyed its own world before it ever reached the stars." Lisa felt her hands tighten into fists at her sides. She forced them to relax. "The restrictions exist because humanity cannot be trusted," O'Kay continued. "You breed too quickly. You spread too fast. You are aggressive by nature. The galaxy has seen species like yours before. They burned bright and then they burned everything around them." Admiral Carter watched from the observation level. He had heard these words before. Every human who served in council space had heard them. They were taught to smile and nod and accept the insults as the price of membership. Carter's son had died 3 years ago. He had been 24 years old, commanding a small patrol ship on the border of space. Raiders had attacked a colony. Carter's son had responded to the distress call. He had saved 2,000 lives before his ship was destroyed. They had never said thank you. They had complained that a human ship had entered their space without permission. High Arbiter raised his arm again. "The council will vote on the human request." The vote took less than a minute. Every species voted against humanity, even the ones who had received human medicine, even the ones whose worlds had been saved by human soldiers, even the ones who privately admitted that humans were not so bad. No one wanted to be seen standing with the vermin. "The request is announced. The territorial restrictions will remain in place. This session is concluded." Lisa walked out of the chamber without looking back. Her footsteps echoed in the long corridor. She felt hollow inside, as if someone had reached in and removed something important. She found Carter on the observation deck. He was staring out at the stars through a window that stretched from floor to ceiling. His reflection looked tired and old. "The same result," Lisa said. "It was not a question." "The same result," Carter agreed. "The same as last year, the same as the year before, the same as it has always been." Lisa stood beside him. The stars were beautiful. Humanity had dreamed of reaching them for thousands of years. They had imagined finding friends out there, fellow travelers on the journey through the universe. Instead, they had found this. A galaxy full of ancient species who looked at humans and saw nothing worth respecting. 150 years, Lisa said quietly. We have given them everything, our best minds, our bravest soldiers, our most precious discoveries, and still they look at us like we are insects. Carter nodded slowly. He had spent his entire adult life serving the Council. He had believed in the dream of cooperation between species. He had told himself that if humans just worked hard enough, proved themselves enough times, the galaxy would eventually accept them. He no longer believed that. "They will never see us as equals," Lisa said. "We could give them 1,000 years of service. We could die for them 1,000,000 times. It will never be enough." Carter turned away from the window. His eyes had changed. Something cold and certain had settled into them. "Then perhaps it is time we stopped asking for permission," he said. "Perhaps it is time we stopped waiting for acceptance that will never come." Lisa looked at him. She understood what he meant. The idea had been growing in the minds of humans across the galaxy for years. No one spoke of it openly. No one dared to give it a name, but it was there, waiting. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am suggesting that we remember who we are. We are human. We do not beg. We do not wait for others to give us our future. We build it ourselves." He walked toward the door that would take them back to their ship. "Come," he said, "we have work to do." Lisa took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders that the Council had drawn around humanity, there were worlds waiting to be discovered. There were futures waiting to be claimed. The Council thought they had put humanity in a cage. They did not understand that the cage only held humans because humans had chosen to stay inside it. That choice was about to change. 30 years passed like water through open fingers. To the Galactic Council, humanity seemed broken. The fire had gone out of them. They paid their tributes without complaint. They followed the rules without question. They kept their heads down and their mouths shut. The Council congratulated itself on finally teaching the humans their proper place. They did not see what was happening beneath the surface. Director Cole stood in a cavern deep beneath the red soil of Mars. The cavern was the size of a small city carved out of ancient rock by machines that worked day and night without rest. Above him, massive structures took shape in the darkness. They were pieces of something too large to build in one place. They would be assembled later, far from watching eyes. Was 53 years old. He had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that came from too many sleepless nights. He had given his entire life to this project. He had no wife. He had no children. The Exodus Initiative was his family. "Status report," he said to the woman beside him. Dr. Wright checked her tablet. She was younger than, with dark skin and clever eyes that never stopped moving. She was the most brilliant scientist humanity had ever produced, and almost no one in the galaxy knew her name. That was exactly how she wanted it. "Drive systems are ahead of schedule," she said. "We completed the 15th prototype last week. Range is confirmed at 2.3 million light-years." Let out a breath he had not known he was holding. 2.3 million light-years. Enough to reach Andromeda. Enough to leave this galaxy behind forever. "And the Council suspects nothing?" he asked. Smiled. "The Council thinks we are building mining equipment. They sent an inspector last month. He looked at our fake reports for 10 minutes and then spent 3 hours complaining about our food." The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. They saw short and assumed humans were impatient. They saw emotional expressions and assumed humans were simple. They never considered that a species might use those assumptions as camouflage. Far away, on the edge of explored space, Captain stood on the bridge of a ship that was not supposed to exist. The horizon was small and fast, built for one purpose only, had commanded her for 11 years. In that time, he had traveled farther than any human in history. He had crossed the void between galaxies. He had touched the light of foreign stars. He had walked on worlds where no thinking creature had ever stood before. And he had found paradise. Recording complete, his navigator said. Planet 7 is confirmed habitable. Atmosphere is breathable. Water is clean. Soil will support Earth crops. Nodded. That was the 417th habitable world they had found in Andromeda. 417 new homes waiting for humanity. 417 chances to start again. He opened a secure channel back to Mars. The message would take months to arrive, bounce through a network of hidden relay stations that the Council had never discovered. Director Cole, he said, the Andromeda survey continues on schedule. We have more than enough. Humanity will not just survive out here. Humanity will thrive. He ended the transmission and looked out at the stars. They were different here. The patterns were wrong. The colors were strange, but they were beautiful in their own way. Soon they would be home. Back on Earth, Senator Park sat in a room with the leaders of every nation on the planet. The room was small and plain. There were no cameras. There were no records. This meeting did not exist. Was 61 years old, with a round face and kind eyes that hid a mind like a steel trap. He had spent his entire career building bridges between nations that had spent centuries trying to destroy each other. Now, he was attempting his greatest act of diplomacy. The question before us is simple, he said. Do we go together or do we stay divided? The president of a nation that had once been called America spoke first. Our people will not leave their homes easily. We have lived on Earth for 100,000 years. And if we stay, we will die on Earth, replied. Not today, perhaps not for centuries, but the Council will never let us grow beyond what we are now. They will keep us contained until our spirit breaks completely. Is that the future you want for your? The room was silent. These were powerful people. They were used to being in control. The idea of abandoning everything they had built was terrifying. But the idea of endless servitude was worse. The leader of a nation from across the ocean leaned forward. What you are proposing would require cooperation on a scale humanity has never achieved. We would need to share resources, share technology, share population space on the ARC ships. Nodded, yes, we would need to become one people, not American or Chinese or Russian or Brazilian, just human. That is impossible, someone said. Smiled. Impossible is what they called space travel. Impossible is what they called faster than light engines. Impossible is what they called making peace with our oldest enemies. He gestured around the room. And yet here we sit, doing the impossible. The debate continued for hours. It continued for weeks. It continued for months. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would leave together. The construction accelerated. On 1,000 worlds, humans built pieces of their future while pretending to live in the present. They worked in secret factories hidden beneath mountains. They assembled ships in asteroid belts far from Council patrols. They stockpiled supplies in hidden vaults that looked like abandoned mining operations. The Council noticed nothing. Why would they? Humans were weak and emotional and short-lived. Humans did not have the patience for plans that took decades to complete. The Council was wrong. Cole stood in the Mars cavern for the last time. Behind him, the final pieces of the first ARC ship were being loaded onto transport vessels. Soon, they would be assembled at a point beyond the galaxy's edge, where Council sensors could not reach. Wright stood beside him. She was older now, her hair streaked with white, her hands no longer steady, but her eyes still burned with the same fire. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Put a hand on her shoulder. "We built the escape. Now we just have to wait for the right moment to use it." "What moment is that?" His face darkened. "The moment when the Council finally pushes too far. The moment when every human in the galaxy understands that staying is no longer an option." He did not know when that moment would come, but he knew with absolute certainty that it would come. The Council was arrogant. The Council was cruel. Sooner or later, they would do something so terrible that even the most patient human would lose hope. And when that happened, humanity would be ready. The first transport lifted off from the cavern floor, carrying its precious cargo toward the stars. Watched it go. 30 years of work, said. 30 years of secrets and lies and fear. "Worth it," replied. "Every moment of it was worth it." The transport disappeared into the darkness above. Others followed. One by one, the pieces of humanity's future slipped away into the night. The Council would not understand what they were seeing. By the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. The colony of New Haven sat on a world of green hills and blue oceans. It was home to 300,000 humans who had built something beautiful from nothing. They had farms that stretched across valleys. They had cities that rose gentle against the sky. They had children who played in streets where no one locked their doors. Governor Torres had led New Haven for 12 years. She was 48 years old, with brown skin and black hair that she kept short because she did not have time to fuss with it. She loved her colony the way a mother loves a child. She knew every street. She knew every family. She knew every dream her people carried in their hearts. She was asleep when the first bombs fell. The ships came without warning in the dark hours before dawn. They appeared in the sky like angry stars, and then the world turned to fire. The first strikes hit the power stations. The second strikes hit the communication towers. The third strikes hit the residential districts where families slept in their beds. Woke to screaming and the sound of buildings falling. She reached for her emergency communicator and found only static. She ran outside and saw her city burning. "All citizens to emergency shelters," she shouted into a megaphone that one of her aides thrust into her hands. "Move quickly. Stay low. Help those who cannot help themselves." The people of New Haven did what humans have always done in moments of crisis. They did not panic. They did not flee blindly. They grabbed their neighbors and pulled them toward safety. They carried the injured on their backs. They shielded children with their own bodies. Lieutenant Shaw was 26 years old, the commander of New Haven's small defense force. He had 50 soldiers and 3 patrol ships that were meant for chasing pirates, not fighting a battle fleet. But when the landing craft began to descend, he did not hesitate. "All units to defensive positions," he ordered. "We cannot win this fight. Our job is to buy time." "How much time?" one of his soldiers asked. Looked at the sky, where more ships were appearing every minute. "As much as we can." They fought for 7 hours, 50 soldiers against thousands of troops. People fell one by one, but they fell forward, always forward, never retreating. They gave the civilians time to reach the underground shelters. They gave Governor Torres time to get the evacuation ships loaded. Was the last defender standing. He had a wound in his side that would kill him within the hour. He had 3 rounds left in his weapon. He had no fear left in his heart. A commander approached him. The alien was tall and confident, his gray skin splattered with human blood. "You fought well for vermin," the commander said. "Surrender and I will make your death quick." Smiled, it hurt to smile, but he did it anyway. Humans do not surrender. He raised his weapon and fired his last 3 rounds. The commander fell. A moment later, so did. But the evacuation ships were already climbing toward the stars, carrying 260,000 survivors to safety. 40,000 humans died that night. 40,000 innocent people killed in their homes, in their beds, in the streets where they had once played as children. The youngest victim was 3 months old. The oldest was 94 years. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Lisa Monroe was 83 years old now. Her hair was white as snow. Her hands shook when she walked, but her voice was still strong, and her eyes still burned with the same fire that had carried her through decades of service. She stood before the council one final time. "The evidence is clear," she said. "They attacked a peaceful human colony without provocation. They killed 40,000 civilians, including women and children. They committed an act of genocide." She activated a display that showed images from New Haven, burning buildings, bodies in the streets, children crying over the corpses of their parents. "We demand justice," Lisa said. "We demand that they be held accountable for this crime against humanity." High Arbiter had not changed in 30 years. His bronze skin was perhaps a shade darker. His black eyes were perhaps a touch more tired. But he was still the same creature who had humanity's request so long ago. "The Council has reviewed the evidence," he said. "We acknowledge that the action was regrettable." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Regrettable. "The Empire faces resource shortages," continued. "Their actions, while excessive, were motivated by desperation rather than malice. The Council cannot condone such behavior, but we must also consider the circumstances." Counselor O'Kay sat in his place, his sharp teeth visible in what might have been a smile. He showed no shame. He showed no regret. He looked at Lisa the way a predator looks at prey. "The Council has reached a decision," announced. "The Empire will pay a fine of 10 million credits. The surviving humans of New Haven will be relocated to existing human territories. No further action will be taken." Lisa stood perfectly still. 10 million credits. A fine worth less than a single warship. That was the value the Council placed on 40,000 human lives. She thought of Shaw, who had died buying time for his people. She thought of the children who would grow up without parents. She thought of the centuries of service that humanity had given to this council, the blood that humans had spilled defending species who would never see them as anything more than vermin. "High Arbiter," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I have served this council for 60 years. I have watched my people give everything they had in the hope that one day we would be accepted as equals. I have told them to be patient. I have told them that change would come. I have told them that the galaxy would see their worth if they just kept trying." She paused. The chamber was silent. "I was wrong," she said. "I was wrong about all of it. This council will never see us as equals. This council will never protect us. This council will never give us justice." She looked at with eyes that held no anger, no hatred, only a terrible, quiet sadness. "For 180 years, humanity has given everything to this council. Our technology, our soldiers, our children. We asked only to be treated with basic dignity. Today you have given us your answer." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. Felt something stir in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation. It took him a moment to recognize it as unease. "Ambassador Monroe," he called out, "where are you going?" Lisa stopped at the door. She did not turn around. "Home," she said simply. "We are going home." She walked out of the chamber and never looked back. Watched her go. Something in her words troubled him, something in the way she had said them. There was a finality there that he could not quite understand. He dismissed the feeling. What could humans possibly do? They were weak, they were emotional, they were contained. He returned to the business of the council, confident that the human problem had been solved once and for all. He was very, very wrong. The signal was a single word, sent across every human world at exactly the same moment. The word was home. Nothing more, nothing less. Just that one simple word that carried the weight of 180 years of suffering. On Earth, people stopped in the middle of their work. They looked at their screens, their communicators, their watches. They read the word and they understood. On Mars, the hidden factories opened their doors. Ships that had been waiting in darkness rose into the rust-colored sky. Workers who had kept secrets for decades finally spoke them aloud. On 1,000 colonies scattered across the galaxy, humans packed their bags. They gathered their families. They took one last look at the homes they were leaving behind. The exodus had begun. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the Constellation, the flagship of the Exodus fleet. He was 67 years old, a career military officer who had spent his life following orders he did not always agree with. Today he was giving the orders. Today he was leading humanity to freedom. "Status report," he said. His communications officer checked her screens. "All sectors reporting ready, Admiral. Evacuation is proceeding on schedule. We should have complete withdrawal within 72 hours. 72 hours to move 12 billion people. It was impossible. The Council would have said it was impossible, but the Council did not understand what humans could do when they worked together. Dr. Wright sat in a wheelchair near the observation window. She was 91 years old now, her body frail and failing. But she had refused to die before seeing this moment. She had built the drives that would carry humanity across the void. She deserved to watch them work. "How are you feeling, Doctor?" Harrison asked. Smiled. Her teeth were the only strong thing left about her, like a woman who is about to watch her children fly. The first wave of ships began to assemble at the edge of the galaxy. They came from every direction, a river of lights flowing toward a single point. Cargo vessels and passenger liners, medical ships and agricultural transports, military cruisers and tiny personal craft. Every ship that humanity owned was moving. Captain Dawson commanded a transport ship carrying 50,000 civilians. He was 34 years old, young for such responsibility. But there were not enough experienced captains to go around. Everyone was needed. Everyone had a role to play. He walked through the passenger compartments, checking on the people in his care. They sat in rows, their faces showing a mixture of fear and hope. Some held children. Some held memories. Some held nothing at all except the clothes on their backs. A woman named William sat by a window with her daughter in her lap. The girl was 5 years old, too young to understand what was happening. She pressed her face against the glass and watched the stars. "Mommy, where are we going?" the girl asked. Stroked her daughter's hair. "Somewhere new, baby, somewhere better." "Will there be other kids there?" "Millions of them," said. "You will have more friends than you can count." The girl smiled and went back to watching the stars. She did not know that she was watching the only galaxy she had ever known disappear behind her. She did not know that she would never see Earth or Mars or any of the worlds where humans had struggled for so long. Perhaps that was for the best. Back on Prime, the Council was in chaos. Reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy. Human colonies were emptying. Human businesses were closing. Human soldiers were walking away from their posts without explanation. High Arbiter stared at the screens in disbelief. What is happening? Where are they going? His advisors had no answers. This was beyond anything they had ever imagined. The humans were not fighting. They were not protesting. They were simply leaving. And then the systems began to fail. The medical synthesizers stopped working first. These were machines that humanity had given to the galaxy, devices that could cure diseases that had plagued alien species for. Without warning, they went dark. Error messages flashed on their screens. Emergency protocols activated. Nothing helped. The agricultural systems followed. Automated farms that fed billions of beings across the galaxy shut down one by one. Seeds refused to germinate. Growth tanks ceased to function. Food production dropped by 40% in a single day. The defensive networks were last. Weapons platforms went offline. Shield generators failed. Early warning systems stopped sending data. The galaxy was suddenly blind and helpless. Counselor OK burst into his private chambers. His gray skin was pale with fear. His sharp teeth chattered as he spoke. "The humans," he said, "they built all of it. The medicine, the food systems, the weapons. They built everything and they put something inside. Kill switches. Hidden programs that only they could control." Felt cold. "That is impossible. We inspected everything. We checked every system." "We checked what they wanted us to check," OK replied. "They have been planning this for decades, perhaps for centuries. We never saw it coming because we never believed they were capable of such patience." The High Arbiter stood and walked to his window. Outside, the station was in chaos. Ships were crashing into each other as navigation systems failed. Lights were flickering as power grids collapsed. The galaxy was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Can we pursue them?" he asked. "Can we force them to come back?" OK laughed, but there was no humor in it. "With what? Our ships cannot fly without human navigation software. Our weapons cannot fire without human targeting systems. They gave us everything, and now they are taking it all away." At the edge of the galaxy, the Exodus fleet was complete. 10,000 ships carrying 12 billion souls, arranged in perfect formation, waiting for the signal to depart. Admiral Harrison looked out at the gathering. It was the largest fleet in human history. It was the last fleet humanity would ever need in this galaxy. "Open a channel to all ships," he said. His communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Harrison took a breath. He thought of all the humans who had suffered under Council rule. He thought of all the soldiers who had died defending species that despised them. He thought of Shaw, standing alone against an army, buying time for his people to escape. "This is Admiral Harrison," he said. "Today we leave behind everything we have known. We leave behind our homes, our history, our dead. We leave behind a galaxy that never wanted us." He paused. The silence stretched across 10,000 ships. "But we do not leave behind who we are. We are human. We are survivors. We are dreamers. And today we go to claim a future that no one can take from us." He nodded to his helm officer. "Engage intergalactic drives. Take us home." The ships began to move. One by one, they accelerated toward the void between galaxies. The drives that Wright had spent her life building hummed with power. Space twisted around each vessel, folding distance like paper. Captain Dawson watched through his window as the galaxy shrank behind them. Stars that had witnessed humanity's suffering became points of light, then specks, then nothing at all. Williams held her daughter close. The girl had fallen asleep, tired from the excitement of the day. She did not see the moment when the Milky Way disappeared completely, leaving only darkness and the promise of something new. Wright closed her eyes. Her work was done. Her children were flying. She died 3 days later peacefully in her sleep. She was the first human to die in intergalactic space. She would not be the last. But she died free. That was all that mattered. The Exodus fleet flew on through the darkness, carrying humanity toward a new beginning. Behind them, the galaxy they had left burned with chaos and fear. Ahead of them, Andromeda waited with open arms. 50 years had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was dying. The great station of Prime still floated in its ancient orbit, but it was no longer a place of power and glory. Half of its lights had failed. Entire sections had been sealed off because there was no one left to maintain them. The crystal windows that had once shone with the light of 100 suns were dark and cracked. High Arbiter sat in his chambers alone. He was ancient now, even by standards. His bronze skin had faded to the color of dead leaves. His 4 arms trembled when he tried to lift them. He had outlived most of his species. He had outlived everything. A chime sounded at his door. He did not bother to answer. The door opened anyway, and Counselor OK shuffled inside. That was barely recognizable. His gray skin hung loose on his frame. His sharp teeth had fallen out years ago. He moved like a creature that had forgotten how to walk. "You summoned what remains of the council," OK said. His voice was a whisper. "I did. There are only 7 of us left." "I know." Rose slowly from his chair. Every movement hurt. Every breath was a battle. But he had something to say before he died, and he would say it standing. The council chamber was empty except for the 7 survivors. They sat scattered across seats that had once held representatives of 100 species. Most of those species were gone now. Some had died of disease when the medical systems failed. Some had starved when the food ran out. Some had killed each other fighting over the scraps of a dying civilization. The empire had fallen first. Without human medicine, the plagues had swept through their worlds like fire through dry grass. 3 billion had become 300,000 in less than a decade. OK was one of the last. They had lasted longer, but their end was coming. Their birth rates had collapsed when the fertility treatment stopped working. Their young were few and growing fewer. In another generation, they would be a memory. Looked at the survivors. Broken creatures from broken worlds, gathered in a broken chamber to witness the end of everything they had known. "I have called you here to speak the truth," he said. "A truth that I should have spoken 50 years ago. A truth that might have saved us all." He paused. No one interrupted. No one had the strength. "We were wrong about the humans." The words hung in the air like smoke. We looked at their short lives and saw weakness. We did not understand that a species which lives only a century learns to treasure every moment. We did not understand that such a species learns to work quickly, to think boldly, to love fiercely. He coughed, blood flecked his lips. He continued. We looked at their emotions and saw primitiveness. We did not understand that their feelings drove them to create, to heal, to protect. We did not understand that a species which feels deeply also cares deeply. His voice grew stronger even as his body weakened. We looked at their numbers and saw a threat. We did not understand that they were not trying to conquer us. They were trying to join us. They wanted nothing more than to be our friends, our partners, our equals. He looked at OK, but could not meet his eyes. "And we called them vermin." A young named La stepped forward. She was an archivist, one of the few who still studied the past. She had spent the last decade researching humanity, trying to understand what the council had missed. "High Arbiter," she said, "may I speak?" Nodded. La activated a display. Images appeared in the air. Humans building hospitals on alien worlds. Humans fighting to defend species that hated them. Humans sharing their food, their medicine, their knowledge with anyone who asked. "I have reviewed every record of human contact with the council," La said. "Do you know what I found?" No one answered. "I found a species that gave everything and asked for almost nothing in return. I found soldiers who died protecting people who would never thank them. I found scientists who cured diseases they could not catch. I found farmers who grew food they would never eat." She paused, her voice trembled. "I found a species that loved a galaxy that refused to love them back. And I found a council that was too blind and too proud to see it." The chamber was silent. "We thought we were teaching them humility," La continued. "We thought we were showing them their place in the order of things, but they were the ones teaching us. They were teaching us what it meant to be kind, to be generous, to be truly civilized. And we refused to learn." Closed his eyes. Tears ran down his ancient face. "We comprehended too late," he whispered. "We finally understood what we had lost, but only after we had lost it forever." He looked up at the dark ceiling, at the stars that were now symbols of nothing but death and decay. "Somewhere out there, beyond our reach, humanity is building something new. They are raising children who will never know prejudice. They are creating a civilization that will last for. They are doing everything we dreamed of doing, everything we promised we would do. His voice broke. And we are dying alone in the dark, surrounded by the ruins of our arrogance. The council had no response. There was nothing to say. The truth was too heavy for words. Far away, in the Andromeda galaxy, humanity was indeed building something new. Their cities covered continents. Their ships sailed between stars. Their children grew up free and happy, knowing nothing of the suffering their ancestors had endured. The old stories of the Milky Way had become legends, tales of a dark time before humanity found its true home. Commander Tim Bradley sat in an observation post on the edge of human space. He was 32 years old, born in Andromeda, a child of the new era. His job was to monitor signals from the old galaxy, watching for any sign of change. The signals had been growing weaker for years. Where once there had been millions of transmissions, now there were thousands. Where once there had been great fleets moving between stars, now there was only silence. He filed his weekly report, as he had done every week for the past 5 years. The readings were always the same. A civilization in collapse, a galaxy eating itself, species that had lived for millions of years fading into extinction. His supervisor called him on the communicator. "Anything new?" she asked. "No, Commander," Tim replied. "Same as always, they are still dying." "Any requests for help?" Tim checked his logs. There had been requests once, desperate pleas from dying worlds begging humanity to return. The Council itself had sent messages promising equality, promising respect, promising anything if only the humans would come back and save them. Humanity had not responded, not because they wanted revenge, not because they enjoyed watching their former oppressors suffer. They simply had nothing left to say. "No requests today," Tim said. "I think they have stopped hopping." His supervisor was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever wonder if we should have stayed, if we should have kept trying to change them?" Tim thought about the question. He thought about the stories his grandmother had told him about life in the old galaxy, the hatred, the cruelty, the endless struggle to be seen as worthy. "No," he said finally, "they made their choice. We made ours. Some doors once closed cannot be opened again." He ended the call and turned back to his screens. The signals from the Milky Way flickered and faded. Somewhere in that dying galaxy took his last breath. He died alone, as his species had lived alone. His final thought was of the humans he had dismissed so easily a lifetime ago. He hoped, in whatever existence lay beyond death, that he would have the chance to tell them he was sorry. But apologies, like time, cannot be recovered once lost. Tim Bradley filed his report and walked to the window of his observation post. The stars of Andromeda stretched before him, bright and beautiful. His daughter would be born next month. She would grow up in a universe of wonders, never knowing the weight of chains she had never worn. He smiled and turned away from the old galaxy. Humanity had a future to build. They had no time for the past. The stars of Andromeda shone on, indifferent to the darkness behind them. And in that darkness, a council that had once ruled the galaxy finally understood the price of its arrogance. But understanding had come too late. It always does.